From the #1 best-selling author of Life Rescripted, you're now tuning in to the Year of Purpose podcast. I'm Zephan Moses Blacksburg. Harlan Cohen is New York Times best-selling author, nationally syndicated advice columnist, and speaker who has visited over 400 college campuses. He's the author of 5 books including The Naked Roommate and 107 other issues you might run into in college. The Naked Roommate for parents only. Harlan is a frequent guest on television and radio programs. He recently launched a new coaching program that takes students and their parents from high school through the first year in college, and you can visit nakedroommatebootcamp.com to learn more, and you can explore Harlan's website for advice and live events at harlancohen.com. Harlan, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, Zephan, it is awesome to be here.
Yeah, so I met you actually when you spoke for the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. This was an event that I volunteer with every year. I've been with them for, I think, going 5 years now. And it's so great to see someone who not only inspires the youth, but also plays guitar and really gets them up and moving. So thanks for joining in today. And I know that you have so much good advice. I mean, you've written a ton of books. You've traveled to, I think, 400 plus college campuses. Let's just kind of jump back to what your college experience was like, and maybe we'll take it from there and move through some of the books and things like that.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And I should mention also that when we did meet, you just, there's some people come off as really good, like kind, nice, accessible people. And, I think that's one of the things about you that just jumps out. So, I'll say something nice about you. Since you said these nice
Thanks,
things.
man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you're a good guy. There's like good souls out there. And when you do this long enough, you can meet someone pretty quickly. You can tell the good souls. And like everybody, if you just think of, who you surround yourself with, and who you've met over the years, and it's always nice to bump into one of those and to be able to talk with someone. So I'm excited, man. But yeah, you asked me a question. My college experience, and if I clear my throat, please forgive me. I got this thing. It's like it just doesn't go away. But my college experience, it really sucked, which was really awful. Like, I never liked being a teenager. I like being an adult much more because, it's like you get to make your own decisions. You're not accountable to other people. I mean, there are drawbacks, but I wasn't crazy about being a teenager. And college for me was really rough. Now, you'd think that, college is total freedom and it's a place where, everything great should happen. And if you look at the brochures, that's pretty much how it's portrayed. And now with social media, everybody's so damn happy. But I had a hard time. I didn't find my friends. I didn't know how to make friends. It's not something they teach you. My fraternity, the fraternity I thought I was going to get into, they rejected me. I'm like the king of rejection. It's one of the things I love talking to teenagers about because I'm awesome at rejection. I wasn't as good then, but I'm better now. And then my girlfriend dumped me. And by some miracle, I had a girlfriend in high school my senior year, and I was really overweight my freshman year. So that's where this whole miracle thing came in. I didn't really think any women would be into me, and had this amazing girlfriend, and she dumped me. And I was in college. I was at UW-Madison, an amazing place, but yet I couldn't find my people in places, and I really struggled. So, that's where this journey started. That's where I really looked and had to ask myself, why is this so hard? This shouldn't be so hard. And I figured it out, and I can share how I figured it out. But I wrote books about it, and it's pretty much what I've committed my life to, is just helping people to get comfortable with the uncomfortable when it comes to life transitions.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and especially that last piece there, becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. I feel like that's something that I've been working on not only through college, but since college, being 6 years removed now. It's still something every single day. And, I shared something with you before we jumped on the call that I had an experience the other day that was extremely uncomfortable and definitely pushed my limits. And it was definitely close to a life or death scenario. So I feel you have
to share the highlights now. You can't just tease everybody.
Yeah, so I guess we have to share it. So I'll jump into that real fast.
Sure,
basically,
yeah.
As everyone knows, the audience has heard before, I'm a member of the rowing club. I go quite often, and our year just started. So basically we row from April until about November 1st. and we just jumped back on the water. It was my first or second day back, and I got put into a single. And for those of you that don't know, rowing boats come in many sizes. You can go in a single, which is a one person. You can go in a double, two people. There's 4-person, 8-person. There's actually these crazy, monstrous concoctions that they make. There's these like 24-person ones that they bring around the country every once in a while that you can participate in. It's insane. But I'm out in my single. It was a little bit windy that day. We had kind of been warned, but that never stopped us in the past. You know, we stopped for really bad weather and lightning, but wind isn't too big of an issue. It just makes it a tougher row. And I got out, made a lap. Huge gust of wind came by, knocked me out of the boat. And for whatever reason, I couldn't right the boat, flip it, and get back in. I had done it tons of times before, but I later found out the water temperature was 47 degrees, which would probably explain why some of my limbs weren't working properly. It was freezing cold. We had a little bit of an issue where it took the coach's boat way too long to get over to me to get me out of the water. And I basically ran inside to check and see if I had hypothermia because it was freezing cold. My head was starting to feel really fuzzy. I couldn't really think straight, so I had to check a couple things. But that was my adventure. Unfortunately, I'm still here standing. I didn't get hypothermia. Definitely got hypothermia-like symptoms. But that was uncomfortable. Being in the water and knowing that you have no choice but to be in the water until someone comes to get you out, you definitely learn to get used to things because you can't really do a whole lot about them sometimes.
Now, at any point during that, did you start to panic?
You know, I only had that first moment where, and this happens every single time I flip the boat, it always kind of happens in slow motion. And so I have that moment of just like, no, 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 you know, and you're in the water and then you don't really panic. I mean, there's just an initial, man, that's really cold. But maybe after trying to right the boat 4 or 5 times, I started to look around and really gauge, you know, is this where I just say, I've got to try to swim to shore? Is this where I just give up? You know, I had to evaluate what I was going to do next. So it was a little bit of a panic, but it wasn't this full-on freak out of, oh my God, I'm going to die, because that's not going to serve me in that moment.
Right. You didn't think you were going to die.
Not at the moment. And I really played it down for a while afterwards until I started to talk to people about it. And I'm like, that was pretty bad.
Right. So do you think, that's the thing, it's like, I wonder how close you were. And then now that you look back at it, thinking how close you might have been. But at the time, you were so unaware and so calm that I wonder the next time you go in, if this awareness of what could have happened will change how you look at, you know, this next time you get in the boat.
Totally. I mean, I've learned so many life lessons just from being on the water that I think realizing and having such a close experience where you know that life is not infinite, that it is finite, it might change the way you look at things again. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'm going tonight, so we'll find out.
Yeah. You know, first of all, I'm grateful that you made it through. I mean, that's frightening. It's more frightening to think about than I'm sure it was to be in it, because I think when you're in it, you're so not aware. But that moment of being in an uncomfortable place, and then the moment of what you do and how you work through it, and clearly you were trained. I mean, me, I would have flipped out. I would have freaked out. I mean, I would have lasted 3 minutes. And, you know, I've never been through it. I don't know how to flip a boat. I can barely swim and tread water. I mean, I would have been cooked. Like, I would have been done. But you know, you've been trained when it comes to getting comfortable with uncomfortable situations, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how do we, because I don't even know how I totally got there. I mean, I guess I know that a lot of it was having very uncomfortable situations in the past, but I mean, how is it that we get to that point where it doesn't make us freak out anymore?
Well, I mean, and the thing for you, like, you've been doing it for how many years?
3 going on 4.
Yeah, and you flipped a boat how many times?
Oh, plenty. Enough.
Like maybe 10?
Yeah, that's probably like just under 10.
Right, and you've been trained, and you were even mentioning before that you are a first responder.
Yeah, so in college I would be a first responder at the recreation center.
Right. So, you know, you were trained in what do I do in highly uncomfortable, tense, difficult situations. And even the questions you were saying you were asking yourself in terms of just gauging where am I and am I in a good place. And I think all those things, like this is what we don't learn in college. This is what we don't learn in life. We're so focused on the academics when it comes to this next phase of our life. But when it comes to or this next phase after high school, but when it comes to social, when it comes to the emotional, when it comes to the gritty, when it comes to those things that really matter in our life, that are meaningful and filled with passion and emotion, we have so little training. You know, so
Yeah.
like so if you take the situation of the boat and you say, okay, I'm going to apply this to dating and relationships. Like, how many times are people in a relationship where it capsizes, okay, and they panic? They don't know
I
what to do.
I feel like everyone has at least at some point in time.
Absolutely. And then you have someone who goes out there once and they have something traumatic happen and they give up, right? Or they play it safe. They're too afraid to put themselves back out there in the uncomfortable. And the reason why it's so hard is because we haven't been trained. Nobody teaches us this. Life in high school isn't about following your passion. It's not about working through uncomfortable feelings and knowing how you get through it. It's about listening to other people and oftentimes thinking who wants me, who likes me, what's going to be safe. And what I love to do is to hear the journey of how did someone make it through it. And I know how you made it through it. It's like, and it comes down to the fact that you were trained, okay? You were comfortable with the uncomfortable. You didn't panic. You knew that there was someone who was eventually going to come. You were in your element, and you survived. You know, me, I don't have my people in places. I'm not trained. I don't know how to do it. If I wanted to, I could. But that's where I think the self-awareness and where what I do comes in to be such a resource is really helping people to pause and think, how can I work to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and know that I'm going to be okay before I even take the boat out on the water, before I even take that next step. And most people are too afraid, and most people don't take that step.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned though that college doesn't prepare us for this uncomfortable space, and so I wonder and I question: does this relate to people who have, let's just say, were graduated college, few years out, got a job, and they're actually in that comfortable space of have a job, have a car, paying bills, adulting is what I call it,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
People get into that space and they're comfortable. Is this perhaps why they're uncomfortable with being in that space? Because it's like an epidemic now of people who hate their jobs, hate what they're doing, and are just dying for whether it's the entrepreneurial lifestyle or the dream job that they don't currently have.
Yeah, I mean, all of it is because so much of life is what other people want and what other people think our life should be. And that's really what we get used to listening to. It's who's the best, where can I be the best, who wants me? Now, that's pretty much the chorus. And then what happens is you get to this place where you are wanted and you're desired and you get the things that are supposed to make you happy, but you're not living a life driven by what you want. You're living a life driven by what other people want and who wants you. And that's where you reach that critical place of how do I move forward? What do I do? Do I just ignore it and mute it and numb it because this is what being an adult is? Or do I face the uncomfortable and say, I want to make a change? And why am I here and what can I do? And when people want to do that, it's really easy. I'll just give you a formula right now because this is what I do. See, I start with people before they go from one place to the next to the next. Like, I like starting with high school students, and I like working with college students too. And I'm great at working with people who are beyond college as well, because when you take a step back and say, what do I want? Well, number one is, are you willing to face the uncomfortable, which most of us have a hard time doing because once you do, it's scary. And once you do face the uncomfortable, then it's people, places, and patience. It's who are the people who are living the life I want to live? Where are the places they learn to do the things that they're doing that have given their life meaning? And how long did it take for them to get where they want to go? And then what I do is say, if I want to make a change, I'm going to connect with these people. I'm going to surround myself with these people. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing things I love to do in these places. And I'm going to put together a plan so that I can take a step in a different direction, although it's scary. But if I'm supported and I know how other people have gotten there, I can trust that I'm going to get there too.
Well, that last one that you said, their patience, always gets me. And I'm sure it gets a lot of people too, is, I try to be patient as best as possible. And I'd like to think I'm a pretty patient guy most of the time. I think that at some point, sometimes we get to this place where we have to take a step back and reanalyze where we're at, if a certain thing just isn't working. Just for example, let's just say we took on a job that isn't working for us, or maybe even, went to college and just picked a school where we don't feel like we fit in. How do we know when it's time to remain patient, and how do we know when it's time to not necessarily give up, but at least walk away or pivot or try something different?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because like we're awful at patience. Like, we suck at patience. Even when you look at like texting, when you're interested in someone and you text them, like you want a response like right now.
Yeah.
If you don't respond to me right now, like what are you thinking? What's going on? I want to know. And then when people go to school, they think it's going to take 2 months or maybe 2 weeks to find their friends and find their places. So what I do is help them to have realistic expectations. And this is where the people come in handy. It's you surround yourself with people who are living the life you want to live, people you aspire to be, people who you really respect, who have been in similar places. And you ask those people, how long did it take for you to get comfortable with the uncomfortable? And if you ask that question to 5 people, dealing with whatever issue, whether it's how long did it take for you to really find your friends in college and be able to find connections? Well, the truth is, I don't know about you, how long did it take you to really find great friends?
I didn't remain friends with most of my freshman year friends. It was probably not till like my second year that I really started to find a group.
Yeah. For me, it took a couple years. I transferred. I gave it a year. Then I transferred to Indiana University, and then I was in a fraternity there. I was a legacy, so they had to take me. So they had no choice. And I was okay with that. I was an A Pi at Indiana.
Me too.
Yeah. I loved it. I love, there's a lot of parts I love about it. There are parts I don't love about it, but I was able to meet a lot of people. Greek life was great in many ways. But what happened is I still didn't feel connected. And I realized because I'd been through it once, it takes a good year, even 2 years. Now, that's a really long time. If you're somebody who's been in the same community, living with the same people, and having the same friends since you were in kindergarten or middle school, the idea that you have to wait a year or 2 years, like that, no one knows how to do that. And this is one of the big things I do. It's, listen, I'm going to help you to have realistic expectations. Now, the truth is, if you're somebody who's in your 20s or 30s, and there's something you want to do and you're not doing it, and you're afraid to do it, I can tell you, you can do it. And I can also tell you that it'll probably take a few years to really get into a good place where that's what you can do full time, potentially. I mean,
Right.
or 2 years. Everything worthwhile. It takes a good couple of years, I think, to really get that place. Excuse me. And we can get more specific into what it is that someone would aspire to do. But the patience piece is tough. But to answer the question, you talk to people who are in the place you want to be, and you ask these people, how long did it take for them to get comfortable with the uncomfortable feelings? And you have to admit the things that are uncomfortable, which a lot of people who are used to being successful, they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to share what makes them uncomfortable. And that's why so many people stop, because they can't even take that first step to be vulnerable when it comes to exploring those feelings.
Yeah, I mean, being vulnerable in itself is pretty tough thing to do, especially, if it's college, you're still figuring yourself out. So why would you open yourself up to the world? But even after the fact, I still feel that you heard it even just in telling my story. Like, I wasn't even going to tell the story of what happened to me the other day on the podcast until you kind of pushed for it.
Well,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit to get there.
Well, here's the thing. People could think that you're a terrible rower, right? They could think that you're just an idiot who doesn't know how to do the sport and you shouldn't be out there. I'm not saying this is true, but like when you share that story and you're being open and vulnerable, there's always some idiot who takes what you say and kind of pokes you there.
Right.
And the reason they're poking you is because they're uncomfortable that you're being so vulnerable, and they're afraid of their own, immortality or whatever it is that you're sharing. It never. I like the siren in the background as we talk about the traumatic story. We got a guy in the water. This is what's going on. I'm going to make the sound work here, man. But where was I? Where was I going before there was the siren took me in a different
Just
direction?
talking about being vulnerable.
Oh, right. So like so you took a big step by doing that, and and I never thought for a second that that was a reflection of you or your abilities. I looked at it as something that could happen to anybody. But here's the thing: when you're not comfortable in your skin, I call it being comfortable in your thong, like thong underwear. It's more of a metaphor, like your rowing thong. If you weren't comfortable in your rowing thong, you couldn't admit that story.
Right.
And, getting comfortable in your thong means I'm willing to look in the mirror and I'm willing to acknowledge what makes me uncomfortable and I'm willing to change what I don't love or work to change the things or work to tolerate what I can't change. Let me be clear. It's I look in the mirror and I acknowledge what makes me uncomfortable and I commit to change what I don't love or I work to tolerate the things I can't change. And when we're being vulnerable, most of us are too afraid um, that other people are going to see our insecurities and fears that are hanging out of our thong. And this is this idea of if you're in this place of being vulnerable, you give people permission to say whatever they're going to say. Think. I had a really funny story the other day. It's a 2-second one. It's a longer story, but I'll
Yeah,
make
go
it
for it.
fast. I was on the L. I was going to the White Sox game for opening day. My dad used to vend at Cleveland Stadium, so when we came to Chicago, he took us to Comiskey Park. So I don't root against the Cubs. I like the Cubs. I'd like the Cubs to win one year. Not if they're playing the Sox, though. No. But anyway, I was on the L, and there were these girls who jumped on the train, and I think they were on something. They were on French fries and some other drug because they were like eating French fries like feverishly. It was interesting. And then they started looking at me, and they're like, "Whoa!" I think they were on some drugs. They're like, "Your ears." And if someone wants to see a picture of me, they can go to harlancohen.com and see my ears. But they're like, your ears, whoa! And she said to her friend, like, do you see those ears? And they're like, oh my gosh! And he's got a face to match it. And I was like, the L is like the subway. And yeah, like some people would be pissed. I swear to you, I smiled. I was like, I'm so comfortable with my ears. Like my ears separate me from the flattered men of the world. Like they are a part of me. I just don't care enough to get upset. But it's this idea of when things are unusual or when we're afraid someone's going to comment on those things, how comfortable are we, and how great are we at getting comfortable with the uncomfortable? And that comes back to that whole thing of people, places, patience. And I'll bring
Hmm.
it full circle to college, to any transition. Let me even like tie this together because we've been in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
Um, okay, life is a series of transitions. Whether you are 18, whether you are 21, graduating college, whether you're going to grad school, whether you're graduating going to the workforce, whether you're single, whether you're going into a relationship, whether you're engaged and being married, whether your parents are here, your parents are not here, death, new jobs, new locations. Life is a series of transitions. And we focus more on search and selection, but transition is really where we either thrive or we struggle. So the idea is when you want to make a change, when you want to do something different in your life, that's a transition. And if you can't take the step to make that transition, then I ask you to step back and look in the mirror and go, what do I need to do? What's so uncomfortable? And once you can acknowledge the uncomfortable, then it's people, places, and patience. You find the people who are doing it, you find the places where you can find connection and community, and then you give yourself a realistic timeline. So as someone who helps college students, I help them to embrace the uncomfortable. My book, The Naked Roommate, shares stories of students, hundreds of campuses. I interviewed probably thousands of students at this point, students sharing tips and stories, sharing what made them uncomfortable, so we can all face the uncomfortable. Then I direct them to the people, places, and resources so that they can give themselves time. And I set a realistic timeline so that we have expectations that are in alignment with reality. Because if reality isn't in alignment with expectations, that's when we get into big time trouble,
Hmm.
and that's when we start to panic. And for you, even going back to the water, the expectations are you might fall, and expectations are someone's going to rescue you in times. And when you start to panic, that's when everything starts to become more dangerous and more difficult. This formula works for everything, I'm telling you. It's really fascinating. And we don't learn it in school, and we don't practice it enough in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we don't get these resources at a time where it's probably the most pivotal for us. I feel like if we were given that type of a thing in college, we'd be in a much different place than many people are right now. I mean, I know personally, I learned it and picked it up very quick after college, for sure. I worked under some marketers that taught many successful business owners and was very fortunate to hear about, you are the sum of the three or the five or however many people you surround yourself with. And so for me, when it came time to become a business owner, that's exactly the type of people I surrounded myself with. And looking back, you can certainly see how my audience has changed and how the group of people I spend time with has changed, as well as the places. You won't find me out on a Friday night sitting at a bar with friends. I don't do that. I don't find any enjoyment in that anymore. Does that mean I don't have fun? Absolutely not. I still have plenty of ways that I can have fun, and it doesn't require me to go about it in the way that many people are currently doing. So I really do like that a lot. We're getting towards like the end side of the episode here, but I'd love to talk just a little bit more on rejection and just this idea of, how can we throw ourselves out there if we're afraid of rejection? I saw one of my friends at some point was doing, I think, like 30 or 60 days of rejection. And so he had to ask, for something every single day that he knew or thought he would get rejected from, including, I think he went to a McDonald's or some fast food joint and asked them if he could jump behind the counter and make his own milkshake. So, right. I mean, I would never do that, but I mean, maybe I will now, but how do we go about this idea of rejection and making sure that, we can get over that fear or that hump that's preventing us from doing something great?
Yeah, I love rejection. I mean, I hate rejection. And it's just god awful. But I love the idea of being friendly with rejection. Like, hey, rejection, I'm okay with you. You don't scare me. I know you really well, because the best things in my life have all started with rejection. Truly. My wife rejected me on JDate before I magically met her at the UPS store in Chicago months later. So there's that. I've had so many publishers reject me. So many people who have rejected, bringing me to their community. People who have rejected my book by buying another book. Even my publisher, the other day, there was another idea I was really excited about, and they're like, I don't think it was going to work. It doesn't seem commercially viable. So this idea of rejection, I mean, it is part of everyday life. It's as normal and natural as breathing. So just knowing it's there doesn't mean it's okay, and we can handle it. So one of the things, and I'll go right into it, and we can definitely connect again and dig more into this, is there's a truth of the universe. And what I like to do is identify this truth, because when we give it a name, it becomes so much easier to look at and to use to our favor. So there's a truth called the universal rejection truth, and it's a part of the universe that's unavoidable. And the universal rejection truth says not everyone and everything is always going to respond to you and me the way we want things to respond to us. Okay, so it seems pretty basic, right? I mean, you've dealt with that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right. So there's two types of people. There's those who face rejection and those who fight rejection. So people who fight are always hating, hiding, running, avoiding, making excuses. The problem either has to be you or me. Okay, those are people who fight rejection. But then there are people who face rejection, and I face the universal rejection truth. And when I get rejected, it doesn't have to be you, and it doesn't have to be me. It could be the universal rejection truth. See, there's somewhere to go. Is it you? Is it me? Or is it the universal rejection truth? So when we give it a name, we have somewhere to go. When we don't give it a name and it's this thing, it's either your problem or my problem. But when we have this place to go, we can work through it. But the only way to work through it is to be willing and vulnerable enough to ask the questions, is it me? What can I do? Why? And when I was a teenager and I asked this girl to go on a date and she said no, and I said, why? And she said, you're too fat. That's what she said. She said, I'm too fat. I knew why. Now, that's everyone's worst nightmare. So how do you handle that? How do you keep going? Well, I had to work to train so that I knew that I was good enough. So I had to either love being fat or I had to work to be more comfortable in my skin. So this is what training is about. Training is being able to face the truth, the universal rejection truth, and to be able to move forward no matter what. So I've worked in all parts of my life. Now there are five big areas where we face this universal rejection truth: socially, emotionally, physically, financially, and academically, which turns into professionally. So those five big areas of life are areas where we tend to be really afraid of facing this truth. So going back to, if you're a 20 or 30 something and you're not loving what you're doing, well, ask yourself, what is the truth? Like, what is it that I want? And it's frightening to think, what do I want? Because when you think of what you want, then there's this fear that you might not get it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can embrace this truth, you could say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this fear. Instead of letting it paralyze me, I'm going to ask myself, what can I do so that I can overcome the things that make me uncomfortable? And who are the people who have been there and done it, who I can surround myself with? And then I can actually put together a plan where I know I can get where I want to go. And it all comes down to rejection. And I know I've been going on a little rejection monologue here, but I just with this rejection thing, why can't we talk to that guy or girl in class, or the one at work, or the one we really want to approach? And why is it that we're too afraid to talk to our bosses about the things that really matter to us? And when it comes to our spouse or our partner, why is it that we're so scared? Why is it that we can't talk to our teachers, our kids' teachers? Why is it that when someone doesn't say things to us the way we want them to say it, we're so afraid? So you see, like, this is everything that we deal with, but yet we don't focus on the areas of our life. Usually we're only good at like professional rejection,
Mm-hmm.
but there's all those other areas. So to me, it's like, if you want to teach something, if you want to be great, consent. Why is consent so difficult? Why is it so hard to talk while sober? Well, I think, it comes down to, I'm horrible at no, and I can't face the truth.
Yeah, no, well, one thing that's been coming up for me lately too, that I've been adding into my vocabulary to help combat this a little bit, is just in my own inner monologue saying, thank you for sharing. If I say, let me go out there and try to make this big proposal for this gig, but wait, maybe I won't get it. I just kind of add to the end of that, okay, thanks for sharing, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say moving on, I don't mean like, run away from it. I mean, let's keep going.
Right.
And it's been just so helpful because it really changes that inner voice that you have with yourself when you're trying to talk yourself into doing something that you're afraid of, and just say, all right, thanks for sharing. What's next?
See, for a lot of achievers and people who have gotten a lot of success, it's about results. We determine success based on results. But if you're an entrepreneur and a dreamer and a visionary, the results aren't how you measure everyday success, because you can't. You can't. You would give up. You measure success in the act of doing, taking a step in a direction of where you know you're going to go. And so much of what I do and what you do is I produce it and I share it with people. And when I share it, it's not that you have to say yes. It's, I'm giving you an invitation to participate in something that I think's wonderful, that's going to enrich your life. And I don't say it quite like that. But when I'm offering an invitation, it's not about what you want. It's about me offering you something that I think you'll appreciate. And if you don't appreciate it, I want to understand why, because I always want to know who you are and what your needs are. And if I still can't accommodate what you want and you're still not interested, I'm thankful and grateful that I was able to get that feedback, with an understanding that one day our needs may align. And if they never do, that's okay too, because we live in a world that's abundant.
I think that's a really cool way to look at the world, to be honest. It
makes it much more forgiving, because then the script of life isn't you have to say something or do something for me to be okay. It's I have to offer, and I give you permission to respond however you're going to respond, with an awareness that I do care and I do want to understand, but I also respect that our interests may not be totally aligned.
That's excellent.
When you think of dating and relationships, it's I give you an invitation to participate in what I think is one of the greatest things in the world, and that's an opportunity to be part of my life. Now, of course, we don't say that. But if that's your mindset, you can walk through life not fearing rejection, because it's not about like me, want me. It's about you look so interesting, or you sound so interesting, or I'd like to get to know you more. I'm interested in you. And the assumption is you'll probably be interested in me, but I want to get to know you more than I'm interested in impressing you.
That's cool. And then you get to learn and grow, even if there is some rejection there, and
Absolutely.
move on to be better. Harlan, this is an awesome conversation. I definitely would love to continue this at some point in the future here. In the meantime, though, I'd love to share with everyone the best ways to find your books, your website, some more information about you, and where you're going to be speaking next.
Yeah, so Harlan Cohen, HarlanCohen. That's the hub where you can get access to everything. I'm really pumped up about Naked Roommate College Boot Camp. It's my new online coaching program to help high school students and their parents go from high school to the end of the first year, because we learn all the wrong things, and I help people to learn the right things so they can do college right. So I'm really pumped up about that. That's at nakedroommatebootcamp.com, so Naked Roommate Boot Camp. And I'm doing some really cool Snap advice. So follow me at Harlan Cohen on Snapchat. I do some really cool, I've been doing some really great stuff on Snapchat. So that's where you can find me, and I'm really open to hearing from people. I would love feedback, and I'm psyched that we have this relationship, and I can't wait to talk more.
Totally. I'm actually going to add you on Snapchat so I can check that out.
Yeah, man, it's that thing. I that's been the most. I'm in love with this, and the Snap advice and all that stuff. So I think Snapchat's really awesome. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, man, and I definitely look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Great. Well, thank you, and enjoy all the water. Thanks for sharing that story. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and helps me too. And it's these types of stories, and I think men who can be honest and vulnerable, it really makes a huge difference in so many people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, it's Zeph. Did you like this episode? Be sure to subscribe so that you can tune in next week and tell a friend about the show. If you want access to free training and exclusive interviews on success, happiness, lifestyle design, and adventure, visit me at yearofpurpose.com. Until next time, go out and let life surprise you so that you can live a life rescripted.